who grew up in the United States, like it still can be kind of foreign. But I think you're right. Like it is for a lot of people is a foreign concept. So I would love for you to, because I think you're one of the best when it comes to this, to talk a little bit about this concept of networking. I know, as you said, it was not something you had a lot of, kind of experience with, but can you kind of talk a little bit about, what your experience was like, and then, how did you make that shift? Like, how did you become more comfortable with it?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Al. Yeah, I feel um, it was a momentous shift for me. My networking experience before had all been very informal. Think about a ship pulling up into a port in Tahiti, and then there's these guys like coming up with their Hawaii kind of shirts up there, who are like the cargo surveyor and the port inspector, and we just start talking and we became friends. That's the kind of networking. Not that I'm not going to benefit anything out of them really down the line. It just makes for a smoother operation. So very very informal kind of networking is what I was used to. But when it came to formal networking, how MBA students are coached on, you should have your elevator speech pitch, you should have your resume walk, you should have all of this. So I tried that a little bit, and it felt very unnatural to me. And I'm a very expressive person. It shows on my face if it is unnatural. Like I knew it was not working for me. So I had to really improvise, and I had to make it a little bit more informal. Of course, it depended on the company or the people I was talking to make it a little bit more informal. But I did not approach any conversation with any expectation that I would get something out of it. My expectation was I should come off more learning something from the person or understanding something more than what I did before. So I kind of flipped it and I started asking more questions rather than presenting myself, um, because I feel that I kind of understood that we also have to try to know them as much as they are trying to know us. It's not a one-way street. And I became much more comfortable at having those conversations, and that paid off very well for me. Like even my internship that I got was through a conversation that I had, which was pretty informal. I was at the National Black MBA, and I was actually talking to the company that was my top target, GlaxoSmithKline, in the consumer healthcare marketing space. And I just wanted to be in that company, but I just kind of I just had a great discussion, and they gave me an interview. I had not even applied for it, and from there on, it was all history. I got that internship, and it just so I think to me it was very easy to become a little more informal, a little more relaxed, a little more natural, in terms of networking, not having any expectation, not seeing that okay, what is this leading to next, like keeping that open. That really helped me a lot, and I think in general, a lot of international students are great at holding conversations. Really, it's just the odd situation or awkward situation of networking that gets some people tongue tied. I think once you remove that barrier mentally, that this is not about you selling yourself to somebody, it becomes much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you explained that. But the other thing that I think you did really well is you kind of talked about some of your past experience, right? In terms of, yeah, pulling up to a port and striking up a conversation with some folks who are from there, right? And I
Yep.
think a good place to start, I think, for people who are a little overwhelmed by it is to look back at your past experience. I think at this point in our lives, we've all had to make a friend at some point, if not many, right? And build a relationship with someone, right? And so while it is a mindset shift and it does take repetition and experience to get used to it, you probably have more ability in it than I think you probably think you do. You just probably called it something different back then, right?
That's a
And
great
so
point.
and I think that what you kind of talked about in terms of relying on some of your past experiences to kind of give you a little bit more confidence, and then certainly bringing in kind of new uh, approaches that you were able to learn on the fly, or whether it was from other classmates or from just getting the chance to practice it by going to a conference like the National Black Conference. Over time it helps you, get up to speed. And I love that example you talked about the internship opportunity that came up. But could you go maybe a little bit more of some of the other examples of how networking and really building relationships helped you in your time in business school?
Oh, absolutely. I think the first one was with my fellow classmates. I still remember my one of the something I considered an achievement for myself was we started in August, and by or July actually with ASW, and by about October or November timeframe, I pretty much knew the names of every single classmate of mine, and there were 300 of them.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I at least knew their names. So that was, I thought that was an achievement to me. And then what I tried to do was I tried to strike up those conversations with as many people as possible, and that helped in a big way, and it helped my confidence personally, because when you look at people from far away, they look different, they feel different, but when you start engaging with them, you know that they are in the same business school, in the same class for a reason. You all are pretty, this whole group of 300 are all pretty well matched up students. Everybody is smart in one area or the other. If you lack something somewhere, you probably are better off somewhere else. Like, so I really feel that all these students who were in that class were equally smart, and that actually was good for me, because I did not feel intimidated that I am coming from a merchant marine background. I do not have any of these business skills per se. This is the first time I'm looking at accounting. This is the first time I'm looking at a balance sheet, or a financial calculation or financial model. It just, all of those fears kind of went away. So that was a big, kind of win for me through networking and through talking to people. So I would go to socials all the time. I remember I went to a tailgate for the first time. I had no idea what a tailgate is, and I did not understand American football at all. But hey, there was food and beer that helped.
Sure.
But
Yep.
it just was something that I kind of continuously put myself in those situations to get to know people at a different level, and that made me feel more and more comfortable. Second piece that I did was I networked a lot outside of students as well. So I networked a lot with faculty members, which not a whole, from my understanding, not a lot of students do that. And then I networked quite a bit with staff and administration, really. And my network there was very informal. I just got to know those people. Like, it was just excellent to know them, because even right now, like I've already mentioned Megan Gosk, like she's a friend. She's somebody I still am connected to, and I feel that I found a friend in that administration. Same way for faculty members, this something came about where Professor J.D. Steenkamp, um, who's an excellent professor of global marketing. He's one of like the top professors in global marketing in the world. I enjoyed his class so much. I just kept following him literally, and I had lunch with him. I had discussions with him. I would go to his office, and I was like, Professor, I just want to work with you on something, like something. If you're writing a book, there must be some small part about India. Can you make me part of it? Like, can I work on it? And he eventually gave in and said, okay, let's write a case together, a case study. So I ended up writing a case study with him, which took me almost a year. I got external credit for it as well. But I was thinking he would make me a case writer, but he made me a co-author, which was very generous of him. And so I co-authored a case on a company from India, with the professor, which is being taught right now at the business school, which I'm very, very proud of. But one of the biggest things is when I finished my MBA, I did have my offer for my internship, but I had to move to another city in Chicago. So I was looking for opportunities, and I ended up at a sister concern of that same company that I wrote a case with, who was a much bigger, much stronger technology-based company. And I worked for them for 2 years. So you don't know where opportunities come from. And while even the job I'm in right now, um, I it was through one of the administration, so somebody who worked at the dean suite, Meena Dor, who is my boss actually. I knew her, so that actually gave me an opportunity to present myself. Of course, there was a whole interview in the process, but at least it gave me an opportunity that she knew my work ethic, she knew what I can produce, and that gave me an opportunity as well. So my networking at business school has been extremely, extremely valuable, and it continues to pay dividends like no other.
Yeah. So a lot of gems in what you just said. So I want to play that back so everyone can hear. So I think the first thing that I loved what you talk about was you came from a place of curiosity and interest. And so curiosity in learning more about certain people, but also following your interests, which maybe at the time wasn't necessarily going to lead to something immediately, but over time did turn into some really great emergent opportunities. And because they were aligned to your interests, they ended up being things that you were really excited about and wanted to pursue, such as the case study that ended up coming out with Professor Steenkamp. So I love that you were both following your curiosity but also aligning it to your interests, whether that is a topic or people, right? The second thing I love that you said, I 100% agree with you. Faculty members and administrators are great people to get to know and build relationships with. One of the things that they have that sometimes other second year students don't have, and second year students are still great, is that faculty and administrators see numerous classes of MBA students, and they can provide guidance and expertise based off of a much longer shelf life, and can kind of help you understand kind of the ebbs and flows of a business school. If you actually, talk to many of them, they will tell you that things kind of come in cycles, and certainly they learn new things from time to time, but they have seen a lot of things that sometimes other students don't have the perspective to see because they're only there for 2 years. And it's funny that you brought up Megan Goss. I was literally on the phone with her yesterday. So I count me as a Megan Goss fan. Megan, if you're listening, you're great. So,
I second
so
that.
yeah, totally. And you're great. And along with you, I mean, when I was writing MBA Insider, Megan was like one of the first, she actually was one of the people who gave me the idea to write the book. And so like through the whole experience, she was very helpful to me. Same with many other administrators at Kenan-Flagler who I met during my time there and who were more than happy to help in whatever way, shape, or form. And so I just can't say enough about the things you just said. I think you had nailed it on the mark. And even just as you kind of talked about your own job transition, right, into the role you're in now, you're working for someone who you knew when they were at UNC and you were at UNC. And so while people, when you're networking, you may not necessarily know what it's going to lead to. It may not be immediate, but building that relationship does pay dividends over time. It may not just happen right away. And I think that's the important thing about networking is it isn't always going to be the immediate outcome that you see right away. It's more about building the relationship and seeing it grow over time. And, at some point you may help them, they may help you, but it doesn't necessarily happen like right away. So I loved everything that you just said there. I think it really adds a lot of color to the importance of networking.
Yeah. Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So let's get a little tactical here.
Mm-hmm.
I think you eventually became a pretty good networker. You are a good networker now, but it took some work, it took some effort, it took some practice. And I'm just curious, do you have any exercises or tactics that students can practice just to help them get more comfortable with going through, the whole networking process?
Yeah, I think I have a few that I've. So luckily for me, this is another thing that you might not know, but before I came to business school, because I was a merchant marine officer transitioning to business school, I knew that I was one of the very, very few. So I started a Facebook page and which helped merchant marine folks kind of transition to business school if they were interested in it. And so I have actually advised upwards of, I would say, 60 to 80 people in this transition, and I really enjoyed it. So I always, even now, there are a couple of merchant marine folks who are in business schools up in Canada and US who I'm in touch with. So I come up with these based on my experiences. I come up on the advice on how you can possibly, network. And one of the things was, of course, was trying to put yourself in difficult situations where you are not unfamiliar situations with basically people who you don't necessarily know really well, and getting those conversations. I think that is that is an easy one that you should do, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. It feels like this is not really polishing your networking, but it really is. If you only hang out and only if you are always within a certain group or within your comfort zone, it is harder to grow. I'm not saying you cannot grow, you will grow, but it is harder to grow. And if when you put yourself out of the comfort zone, you can grow a lot. Now, this is a very generic advice, but I think this is the basis or fundamental of all of it. Something that I did not know during business school, but I came to know later was when I was looking at transitioning out of my previous job, I started networking with people, and I just was networking through curiosity. I would reach out to alums and I would talk about, like, I just want to understand more about your company. Of course, I do my homework. I would know everything about that company that is public facing. I cannot go in asking for things that are already publicly available, but I would go in and open ended and ask about their jobs, ask about their lives, what do they like about it, what do they do not like about it. But even more so, I would talk about myself and my strengths and my weaknesses, and then very, very honestly, and say, I think I do. If I do genuinely like that organization, I would say I do like this organization. Where do you see I could fit into this organization, or where could I be of value to this organization, right? And many a times, and I will tell you one example, was with Workday, a software company based out of the Bay Area. I was interested in working for Workday, and I networked really well with them. And I found some really good mentors out of that. They basically was like, they took me under their wing, and they were that there was a particular alumni, Bill, who had graduated like 15 years ago, and he was helping me understand all the, how Workday works, what are the different groups, who works what on what areas, and based on my strengths, he started guiding me towards a certain role. Now that he's guiding me towards a certain role, he felt ownership. He felt invested into making me succeed. So now he was connecting me to all these people and also writing glowing testimonials of me. Of course, after a lot of interaction, but he was doing that and really helping me uh, get into get uh, into that role. So because he was invested in that, unfortunately, that role did not open up in the right time. But I was very confident that if that role were to open up, I was the first person they would interview. I was that confident about it. And I'm not sure that I would have gotten the job, but I, I think that tactic was very well received, where I came in with an open mind, and I let them help me navigate to a certain conclusion. Hey, you might be good to work on, say, brand management or something like this. So this has worked really well, because I think people generally want to help, and if we restrict them and constrict them in our thinking and our ideas, they don't go as wide as they could. When you allow them to think for you, I think that you can get much better results. So I think when students are getting on a call, or even alumni are getting on a call with somebody, I think keeping an open mind and really seeking out mentorship rather than a position or a job is certainly the better way to go.
Nope. I think that, again, that's all great insight. And a couple things I like what you said there. Number one is being able to do the homework. It's table stakes in terms of going into a conversation, feeling prepared, knowing everything you can about the company, the industry they're in, the challenges they face. You can't know everything, but you need to do your homework to have an informed conversation. And I think the other thing that you said that I think is really good is that it is not necessarily a one-time interaction, but something that develops, and it may not develop right away, but it is something that can develop over time. And I think part of it is just having the patience and persistence to watch it through. And then I think the last thing you said is that coming from a place of curiosity, and also giving them, making it easy for them to help you. And I think you're right. I think that most people are happy to help. It's just that sometimes if you're not, a couple things happen. Number one, if you go specifically to the job piece, like sometimes it may turn them off, right? But number
Absolutely.
two, I think that a lot of times people are busy, right? And so to the degree that you can give them a way to help that is easy for them to do or navigable them to do, I think it makes it easier for them to say yes and to be willing, like, to help. And certainly too, obviously, if you can, particularly if you're networking with alum, obviously the fact that you both go to the same school, that's a shared commonality. And also thinking through any other commonalities that you might have to them to kind of build that relationship and build that trust to get them to the point of, like you said, that individual from Workday who was all of a sudden, thinking of roles that could be great for you, or introducing you to other, team members that he knew or she knew. And those things can happen, but it does take a little bit of trust building and relationship building before those doors open. And I wish there was I could say that there was a clear methodology for how to do that. It is there. I haven't found one yet. If anyone has one, let me know. I think part of it is just because everyone is kind of different, but I do think that over time you certainly learn some things that work and some things, that don't, right? And so,
Mhm.
I think you do get it, eventually, but no, I've had some similar experiences as well. I think for me, I remember going during my time at UNC, I was really interested in interning at this one company, and I went and did a LinkedIn search, and I found one single person at that company who went to both UNC and my undergrad, Boston College. Found one person, reached out to him on LinkedIn, and just mentioned that, like, you're the only one that I found who went to both these schools. And sure enough, he loved his experience at both the schools, and so did I. And so as a result of that, he literally did the same thing that your colleague at Workday did, where he literally opened up every door that he possibly could for me. But again, it was a little bit of luck, but like just the sheer fact that we had that shared commonality of literally being some of the only people who had been both alums of both the schools
Right.
really was a thing that led him to kind of be like, you know what, like, I want to help you out. And now when I get people like who are that for me, like, I always help them out because I know, and I've been there. So yeah. And I guess as a transition now, the funny thing is that now as an alum and now as working for a great employer, you're kind of on the other side of these networking conversations. So in many cases, many students are kind of coming to you, and I'm just curious, what are some things that you look for when you're on the other side of these conversations, these networking conversations, when you engage with students, or maybe said like a better way, what's going to make you act like that gentleman or that woman from Workday and really open those doors for someone? Like what, yeah, like in those conversations, like what do you look for? Or like what are the things you see, like want to do or want to see, or what are the things that help you kind of want to help someone else?
Yeah, that is a great question, Al. I think the first thing I'd seek really is genuineness. Like somebody just comes across as comfortable in their skin, is genuine, um, is not trying to really upsell themselves or anything like that. This is my personal preference, and again, everybody is different, right? So, I really feel that is one thing that I look for. Second thing is openness in general, because I practice that. I like people who practice that, right? Like it's like you like the people who are thinking in the way you are thinking. So I'm a little bit biased when somebody comes in open and saying, "Hey, I like your company, but what do you think? I have this background, I have all of this." Then I all of a sudden spring into action, like, "Oh yeah, you should maybe this. Oh no, maybe this area." So that's just the way I kind of operate. But I think I'm happy to kind of give a leeway in terms of even communication skills. Not everybody has the perfect communication skills, but that is not necessarily an indicator of how good a
Hmm.
contributor that person can
Sure.
be.
Yep.
Everybody's coming from different places, and it's just to see beyond that barrier. I think that is first thing, the genuineness as well as openness. These are two things, but then consistency. Like if they are going to be consistent and if they follow up, that is important to me. Having a great conversation with somebody right then and being as helpful as possible, I'm kind of making myself vulnerable, right? I'm opening myself up and I'm vulnerable. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm trying to do whatever I can. But if the person does not follow up, then I might as well be like, this is clearly not as important for you. So I should not be putting in my time and energy into it. So that is one of the big indicators for me, that is a person following up, and following up also the right amount and in the right way. That I think tone is everything, whether it is email or whether it is communications. As long as the tone is that of curiosity, that of learning, and that of you know uh, just exploring, I am all for it. I really enjoy those conversations. There have been many such instances where I've gone up to my talent acquisition team personally and said, hey, this person you should be looking at. I think this is a great person to have at our company. I would do that. I would go to a hiring manager. I've done that for at least two people in the recent past, in the last 6 months, when I went to the hiring manager and said, hey, by the way, we know each other, this that, I have a friend, or I have somebody at UNC Kenan-Flagler or at another business school who could be a great candidate for this job. I just wanted to plug in, and if you can have just a casual conversation with this person, uh, then he or she would appreciate that. So that this is something that I would do, but I have to feel that connection. I think it's a
Yeah.
very it's I, I'm more of a data analytics kind of guy. I like data, but when it comes to this, it is a very fuzzy thing. It's like, how do you feel about it? If you feel, and these are the components like genuineness and openness, and then follow up. These are the things that make a recruiter or an alum feel good, that this person is actually interested and I'm not wasting my time doing this. Because especially as alums or recruiters, like you, recruiting is not your full-time job. You're just helping out your company, and you're helping out in a way that you can. And for them to understand that there is a full-time job and role that you have, plus you have your family and you have 20 different directions you're being pulled into. So they have to be mindful of the fact that if somebody is giving me the time, they should show that respect as well.
Yeah, I think what you nailed it on the head, and I particularly the last thing that you said, because I know other classmates of mine and other alum, and myself included, we absolutely do want to help, but certainly you're right. Like, recruiting is not our full-time job. We're more than happy to help when we can, and I agree with you. If I feel that people are genuine and they're thoughtful and they follow up and they are committed to it, I'm much more likely to be able to try to vouch for them to the degree that I can. And I also think that's important to remember too, if you're networking or talking to someone for the first time. When you go in as an employee, many times when you're asked to, write a referral, you usually have to put a description of what you know of the candidate, or your experience with
Right.
them. And so if you're only talking to someone for the first time, their ability to confidently speak to your abilities is probably going to be pretty low just because it's the first time you've met them. And so if you're someone who wants a referral or wants to get that referral, just keep that in mind where they may not necessarily not number one want to do that, but number two, they may be in a much better position to do that for you once you've built a relationship with them and they can better
Right.
speak to your abilities. It's just it's just a reality of sometimes it just takes time to build a relationship. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. So I'm glad you brought that up. So my last, I guess, question for you, just because I think you've shared so many great insights about networking, but I would love to get a little bit more tactical. Lastly, what advice do you have for people who are not comfortable with networking, or for if you are one of those MBA students for who this is new for? Like, what should you be doing to get up to speed and maybe overcoming some of those overcoming some of those challenges?
I think the first thing they can do is go and attend all the social events that are happening at the school, especially right at the beginning of your MBA. There are a lot of social events that are happening. And whether you like to drink beer or wine or not, whether you like to do barbecue or not, whether you like to hang out with a lot of people or not, this is the reality. This is the phase where you need to expose yourself to that. So I would highly encourage them to, in the beginning at least, to go, because then there are situations when there are groups of people talking, and how do you insert yourself into that communication or that conversation in a non-intrusive way teaches you a lot. And you'll do it in the wrong way multiple times, but you'll know you didn't do it ideally, or you didn't do it right, and then eventually you will learn from that. I think there is one easy way to kind of put yourself out there. And I think the biggest thing is the decision to make, that I'm going to put myself out there. Executing is easy, just saying that I want to do it is the more difficult part. Just committing to it is the more difficult part. And once you do it, you will get better. Second thing is to go on a little bit of a self discovery. I feel everybody has their style, not everybody is the same. I feel some people do very well in groups, some people do very well when they talk one on one. Some people do very well in a more informal setting. Some people are great with working with scripts and just giving out a scripted answer. Everybody has their own style. You need to discover the key elements of your style through all these interactions, and then once you have discovered that, you stick with it. For example, the elevator pitch, that was so alien to me. That was something I was so uncomfortable with. So I decided I'm going to flip it completely. I'm not going to follow that speech. I'm going to make up my own, which is completely different, which is absolutely I'm flipping it on its head. It's more about asking them questions rather than even talking about myself, because if they want, they'll ask me about me. Right now I'm asking them about them. So I kind of flipped it because I thought that was more comfortable for me. So I think you need to figure out your own formula for yourself. That is the first thing for people who are not comfortable doing this. And quite honestly, it is if you are an introvert, it might not be as much fun for you. And I get it. Not everybody is extrovert, not everybody enjoys. It seems like work to some people, whereas to some people this might be like, oh, this gives me energy, you know. So you need to approach it in the right way. If sometimes introverts are better off having conversations on the phone rather than in person, they're then do that. If you think that you're an extrovert, or you feel that you're better off in person, then you might not want a phone call, but maybe a FaceTime call. Ask for that, because you might be better off with a FaceTime call. So you really have to tweak it to uh, your strengths. Play to your strengths, not to your weakness. The school will tell you. The schools will tell you how to network, and they will give you scripts. I think you only take what you want from that, but you need to really customize it for yourself and customize the approach.